Did somebody say secondary water level? Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland. In the last part we went through Yogurt Yard defeating that mole bot at the end of it, and now we're in World 6, Orange Ocean, which is probably the one time in the game where they outright have more of that world's theme in it, in the levels, because there is a good amount of water in these levels. Also, for some reason, that's another thing, actually, that the hammer power changes versus the sword. The sword power, basically anything that you slash with it dies. With the hammer, you have to hit them with the hammer. Imagine, this is going to be a strange comparison, but it's the closest I can think of. Imagine in Smash Brothers Melee, hammer is Marth, sword is Roy. That's the closest comparison I can really think of. But we do need the hammer power up from the last world in this stage, though, because we need it in order to reach this specific door down here. You could theoretically also use stone, but hammer is just more useful than that because it leads to the first switch for World 6, which opens up the museum, which obviously museums, free power-ups, always going to be useful. That is something I will give the Kirby series credit for, though. In the case that two power-ups are very similar, like hammer and sword, they still do a good amount to differentiate the two. For instance, fire has a very similar power in this game that's not even freeze, it's called ice. We haven't seen it yet, and I don't even think I actually get it during the LP. But the major difference is that, similarly to the freeze power-up, in this game at least, it does freeze enemies and allow you to use them as blocks. Later games would give them even more individual techniques to be used alongside them. In fact, I think the freeze power-up just fuses with the ice one eventually, similar to how burning fuses with fire. I don't think I ever use ice. I should probably get its description up from the pause screen. Oh, wheel. I don't need you right now. I would normally get you, but I have better things to do right now. The ice power-up's pause screen is, first I freeze them, then I'll kick them along. Brr. Or wait, is it the freeze one we haven't seen yet? You see, that's also the issue. I can't remember which one is which name-wise, because I rarely use the ice power-ups. Usually, if I have to pick power-ups, like I said, it's either hammer, sword, wheel, or mainly UFO, really. If I have to choose a fire one, it's usually burning, but even then, I only use that when I absolutely need to, usually. Mind you, I will say, that's also my playstyle as a Kirby player. Some Kirby players like to go for every power as soon as they see the next one. I like to stick with what I'm comfortable with when I can. For instance, when my friend Jordan and I played a lot of, or at least that last third of Star Allies, I tended to stick with Spear, as well as another one. Also, I paused there for a reason. It really sucks that I lost hammer and or stone there, because we needed in order to access that door down there where the switch for this stage is. So, I need to backtrack for this stage. In fact, this is the first time I think I've had to backtrack in the entire LP. Whoops. I wish I could have gotten it flawless, but oh well. Backtracking through these levels isn't too bad, because one thing I will give the this style of Kirby game, where there's only one thing in a stage versus the three that would happen in later games, is that the stages are inherently shorter because of that. Well, that was just embarrassing. Well, luckily I do have 46 lives still. I do believe I have completed this game deathless before, but it's been such a long time that I forget what the live total was at the end. Because if I'm doing this game deathless, I'm probably not going through all the extra routes trying to get every single instance of an extra life. I would assume I probably ended around 60. That sounds about right. Though this is also weird in that I think this is a game that has a score system that doesn't tie the score system into anything lives-wise. I don't think you get one for certain live things. I think in this game, the score is purely just bragging rights, and it might keep a high score on your save file. Not that it really means much, because you can just revisit the levels and grind for points anyway, but yeah, I mean, if you'd like score attack, I guess you could do it. There's probably some old, like, Twin Galaxies forum that's like the fastest time to reach max score or something like that. Either way, now let's go back to this level. I need to get stone from that room we were in earlier, and then come back to this room, break that peg, and there's the switch for this level. Usually I do screw up on my own playthroughs getting a switch earlier, I admit, so I'm glad I got this far without doing that, but yeah. And here's the opportunity for you to get burning, in the case you need it from the World Select. I do believe the max tomatoes always spawn upon defeating the bosses, so it's always good in the case you're low on health just to go fight one of those bosses, unless you're low on lives. Also, I love the background in this stage. And here's the weird thing. Color-wise, I'm not usually the biggest fan of yellows, oranges, and reds in combination with each other. Usually I like a cool color to offset the warmth. But with sunsets, it's always just too good looking, you know what I mean? Though I will say, probably my favorite color combination is purple and yellow. Helps that they're complementary colors as well. I'm not exactly sure why that pair in particular just always look the nicest to me. Either way, we want to get the hammer from that bonkers mini-boss and come over here and break this bomb block. Now, this is potentially one of the hardest to find switches in the game because it doesn't immediately... The bomb block immediately opens something, but it's not the most graphically obvious. Right where the bomb block once was, there's now a little hole in the wall. And now for one of the weirder to get things, we need to come into this room and try to get laser as soon as possible and don't screw up like that. If you screw up, you just have to go back through this little door over here. As soon as I see it, there we go. And then go back through there. I've honestly never gotten that one up. I'm not sure how you would get it. Probably just go through the main door and swim downwards, I would guess. It's one I never really find myself going for just because I have other things to focus on at that specific moment. Also, make sure when you swallow a laser that you land on one of the platforms, because then you won't be able to swallow it and you might accidentally die, and that's no good. But the reason we want laser is so we can stand on the lower of the two platforms here in the middle, fire at the wall, and then get in the cannon quickly, because the laser power-up does, in fact, trigger the fuse. And with that, we got the switch. We have an access to another bomb rally, I believe, and we continue into the stage. And seeing the sails reminds me, something about this game's graphics always stood out to me, and that's one of those games that sometimes I think uses 3D polygons in the backgrounds. Not just, I mean, like the background images, I mean the background elements of the stage. Because those propellers back in World 4, I think, in the background of that one stage themed after an airship, did not look the same kind of 2D that the rest of the game did. And it's not, and the Game Boy Advance could definitely do some form of 3D models, I believe. Looking at the Tony Hawk Pro Skater game, as well as that weird Max Payne port, which was just bizarre that they managed to fit that many voice lines into a GBA card. It's like putting Resident Evil 2 on the N64 in a way, actually. Or on the Gamecom. But mind you, the Gamecom version of RE2 was lacking. I do believe, though, by this point, that the mini-games have reached level 2. If it's not this world, it's next world, and either way, it's good enough time for me to talk about it. Whenever you reach a second level of a minigame, they just generally get harder. I believe, for instance, the Kirbys start to hit the bombs faster in level 2 of Bomb Rally. I think the placements of the black sections of the check change in Rail Grind. And the times for the draws in Quick Draw completely change on level 2. On level 2, Waddle Doo takes 63 seconds versus level 1's 82. Wheelie, not seconds, hundredths of a second. Wheelie takes 41 hundredths of a second versus 50. Chef Kawasaki takes 17 versus 24. King Dedede takes 13 versus 17. And Meta Knight takes a very meager 11 hundredths of a second to take you down versus 14. Level 2, I think I've only ever beaten once. I don't think I've ever beaten the level 3s of any of the minigames in this game in first place, at least. And this is a very gracious room if you like one-ups, because there's like 4 in here. I don't know why, also, but this is probably the song in the game that sticks out to me the most. Potentially because I think it's one of the first you hear in the game, but it also just has that right kind of high energy for me. Though this part of the song, I have distinct memories. I used to play this game at the dinner table while I was waiting for my mother to put dinner on the table. And that section of the song always scared me. And I think it's because I associated it with a very similar property from the Super Mario Brothers games, where when you reached a certain time on the timer, the whole dan-dan-dan-dan-dan-dan-dan would happen and the music would speed up. I always thought, for some reason when I was younger, that I was running low on some sort of invisible timer, and well, I was clearly very, very, very wrong, but actually, has there ever been a Kirby game with a timer outside of, like, minigames? I don't think there has been. Huh. Mind you, I guess, again, more relaxed series meant for a younger audience. Having a timer could potentially be a bit stressful on younger audiences. In the wrong way. Hell, remember, kids got scared by the Sonic drowning jingle. Having a timer in a game like this would probably terrify them half to death. Very easy to find switch hidden right there, by the way. I say easy, but I missed that quite a bit as a kid because I just, for some reason, couldn't associate that with something. Mind you, I think it's because every now and then I had some strange glitches on the Game Boy Advance anyway, so I probably just assumed it was one of those. I'm thinking of this one time where some weird black boxes starting showing up on... I want to say it was Pokemon Ruby, or was it Emerald? It was one of the Gen 3 Hoenn games. Get Parasol for this room, by the way, otherwise you're going to get hit a lot. As well as this room. Parasol is just really useful for this, even though they rarely ever take advantage of this particular property of it in this particular game. Some other games take better advantage of it, mind you. It's like Kirby's Adventure, which this is a remake of. Didn't take the best advantage of the powers because it's the first time they implemented them, if I recall. And on to World 6-5 after we take care of Kirby's Air Grind. Level 2 onwards in this particular minigame get a bit more strict, not only with the size of the black sections of the track, but also just the amount of time you have before you get what's considered a great or amazing putback on and the speed you keep because of that. Because that's the entire thing with this minigame. You're trying to keep your momentum going. And I think you technically infinitely accelerate. I've actually never seen what it is to get every single track on this particular game, like, at max rating. So I assume you probably get some real good speed. And it was that mistake there at the end that probably cost me anything third and above. Oh, it's such a sad jingle. Either way, now it's time for World 6-5. I think these guys give you ice. No, they give you freeze. Okay, so ice is the one I'm thinking of that's like fire and ability type. I think that's given to you by these particular enemies, but I don't ever get it or use it. Mostly just because I'm good enough with ice. Now, I could recommend grabbing onto a laser enemy around here, but I'm going to skip doing that because I have a different method around it that I think is just a bit better for my purposes. Also, we just drowned those guys. That's sad. That's really sad. Kirby, you monster. We know you were a cannibalistic monster, but come on, man. I do like the whole Kirby is both a complete and total soft ball, but also a complete psychopath part of the internet. There's just something very funny about it. And if I recall, it, like, tonally peaked, I think, in... Oh, that sucks. In There Will Be Brawl, just because of what they did with Kirby in that. But it really sucks that I destroyed that fire enemy, because I think that enemy is the one on this screen that might not respawn, and I need it in order to trigger this fuse to lead me into this cannon to get the switch for this stage. At least I think it's a switch. So, we're going to be backtracking to this stage really quick-like. You know, I know it's appropriate given the fact that this game takes place in Dreamland, but something I always appreciate about a lot of the backgrounds in this game is that they have a very dreamlike quality to them. Especially for when they're in between the, or rather in the background of the bonus game. I love that spacey background. There's the switch. And that unlocks a next quick draw. I don't think there's too many switches left in the game. I think there might be one or two at most, because I don't recall World 6 having too many. At this point, we're definitely on World 2 of it, Level 2 of this. And Level 2 is really hard, as I said. I think I've only cleared Level 2 of this once. Level 3, nonce. And it's not like it matters, because unlike, say, Kirby Superstar, where clearing everything counts for your save file, in this case, 100% on a save file, I believe, is just clearing the game with all switches. And maybe all minigames cleared, like the doors. I'm not even sure about the minigames. It might actually just be the switches. I love this song. Kirby music is very good at being one of two things. Either really, really high energy and exciting, or really, really relaxing. Ooh, UFO. Yes, UFO. UFO is probably the most late-like ability in the game. And what I mean by that is, it's the most like anything later in the series. Not many other power-ups get more than one ability, depending on how long you press the button or what you're doing when you're pressing the button. And it's very jarring because of that. It makes me wonder if they implemented UFO the last out of all the abilities. By the way, hi Switch. Just because it's the most later in the series, like. In fact, I won't be surprised if maybe it's a case if they took inspiration from UFO to add more abilities later on. Not to mention the added complexity of the systems they were putting later games in the series on, such as the Super Nintendo with Superstar. I still haven't decided, by the way, what version of Superstar I'm going to do when I eventually get to that game. I'm feeling Ultra just because of the sharper look and the fact that the HUD doesn't take up a third of the screen. Because I really don't like that about the original Superstar. That HUD is a bit too big for my tastes. You got 2 doors here, but it actually doesn't matter which way you go because we already hit the switch. I think it just depends on what mini-boss you face. Here we fight 2 Poppy Bros seniors. I think another one you might fight like 2 bunkers or something. I honestly forget it. I don't take that pathway. Admittedly, this is a pretty annoying alignment, though, just because there's so many enemies jumping around and that can throw projectiles at you, and I think the Poppy Bros seniors do directly aim for you, so you need to be a bit careful with that. Ah, UFO, you're so powerful. One thing I will say about UFO in this section, though, is that it is slower to just fly around as the UFO. It's faster to dash as standard Kirby here. And you want to take advantage of this hyper candy as best you can. Oh yeah, that's something I forgot since I did it earlier. The UFO can also destroy the gray blocks. I always forget it can do that because this is the one stage in the game they have you do that with. And now time for our next Meta Knight mini-boss. UFO is still very, very useless for these. But hey, they're the most effective soldiers because they actually killed me this time. I will say there is some difficulty in these sections just because of the amount of enemies being thrown directly at you, trying to attack you all at once. Not many other areas in the game get this crowded. If they do, it's generally just because it's a longer hallway with a lot of enemies in it, not one singular room with like 7 enemies directly targeting you at once. I say 7, but I think actually the most I can spawn in one of these areas at once is 3. If not 4, depending if that flying enemy shows up. But this is a very notable case of this little mini-boss because if I recall, it's also the last one in the game. So that's nice and dandy. And now we're on to potentially the most interesting boss fight in the game. You don't need any power-up for this, and for good reason. We're fighting Meta Knight, and you need to get the sword in order to fight him. He likes to jump all around and block your attacks with his sword. Notable, you cannot actually lose your sword in this fight, unless, at least if it's the one that he gives you. However, he likes to stand still for a few seconds, leaving him very open to attack. On the whole, he was probably the hardest boss when I was a kid, but nowadays, he's pretty easy. Oh my god, he's a blue Kirby. A blurby, if you will. Either way, with that admittedly kind of anticlimactic boss fight, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 6, we're gonna go finish off the game. See you guys then.